Welcome, folks. We'll get started in a few minutes. Welcome, folks. We'll get started in a minute or two. Oh, you're on mute, Rafana.
Mr. George, if you want to let me know when we have quorum. If we don't have quorum by 3 after, we're just going to go ahead and get started. And we can circle back to the meeting minutes.
Yeah, we're still waiting on a fair amount of members, it looks like.
Got it. Just because I know we have a lot to get done today. Good morning, members. We got Senator Pop. We have members of Otsky here. Vice Chair Lucero, good morning. We got lots of folks, actually. Member Cole. Member Moritz. Fantastic. Member Anderson. All right. For those of you just joining us, we do have a lot on the docket for today, so we will start right at 3 after. If we don't have quorum, we can always circle back on the notes, but make sure we have plenty of time today for discussion.
Madam Chair, we do have 11 members here, so we have a quorum.
Fantastic.
Whenever you'd like to start. Yeah.
All right, fantastic. Everybody is on time today. All right, I am State Representative Kristen Bonner of Maple Grove, and we're going to go ahead and get started for the day. I'm going to call this meeting of the Work Group on CICs and HOAs to order for January 17th, 2025. This is one of our final meetings in the series, and the purpose of today's meeting is, of course, to do some work, to review recommendations, and get those ready for our final report of recommendations to the legislature. First order of business is that we have some meeting minutes from January 10th that need to be adopted. Mr. Vice Chair, do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll move to approve the minutes.
All right, very good. Member Green makes a motion to move the minutes. All those in favor, please unmute yourselves briefly and say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Any opposed? All right. With that, we will approve the minutes for January 10th, 2025. And with that, I'm going to pass it to Dr. Klein to share today's agenda.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Here we go. Thank you. Is everybody seeing the screen share? Thank you. So we are at the moment in our welcome and purpose. There will be an overview of the legislative report that will be about 10 minutes. There will then be small group work on recommendations. We'll be sharing more information about that shortly. Then a large group discussion on the refined recommendations coming out of the small group work. And there will be a brief break around the midpoint of the meeting because we have the extended meeting time. Finally, we will adjourn with the details about the upcoming work group working session, the next one being on Friday, January 24th from 10 a.m. to noon via Zoom. Representative Bonner.
Thank you, Dr. Klein. I appreciate that walkthrough. Again, as we proceed, I do want to briefly remind folks about decorum. Obviously, we've said this before, but make sure we treat each other with respect and be polite at all times. Make sure that you direct any commentary through the chair or your facilitator. Please note that because of the longer meeting today, we will have a brief break in the middle, as we mentioned, for all those bio needs, or just to stretch your legs. And then finally, we will have we'll walk through at the end and go through our next steps and our next meeting. But we're going to start today with an overview of the legislative report. And with that, I'm going to hand it to Mr. George to go over the key sections of the report and walk us through it.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. We have posted a draft final report to the working group's website. If you'd like to follow along, I will share my screen as well, so I can walk through it with you. So can you all see this? Awesome.
Yes.
So I'm just going to do a quick walkthrough of how it's currently been drafted, the report. So we have a title page, contents. Starting on page 3, we have an executive summary that'll just walk through the duties of the task force, of the working group, the purpose, and kind of an overview of the work and how it conducted its work with presentations and accepting public testimony. The enabling legislation is here on page 4, 5, and 6. Listed is on page 7 is the working group members. And then the main body of the report essentially is just the overview of presentations to the working group. And I'll walk through of the various meetings we've held. So walking through the purpose of the working group and what presentations we've heard and research we've conducted. So what I've done here is essentially pulled out data information, statistics that were presented to the working group at each meeting, and citations obviously here. And that is kind of the format of the body of the report. And then any recommendations that were given to us by the subject matter experts that were invited to the working group are listed in the report. So meeting 3 here, for example, on page 9, a walkthrough of statistics, data, information that were presented, and then any following recommendations that the presenter gave to the working group. Page 10, meeting 4, same overview, same outline for how the report is drafted, overview of information, and then any recommendations that were given. So that's the format as it currently is for all the meetings we've held. Meeting 6 here, and then all recommendations are that were given are outlined here. Meeting 7. Nick Morrison, gave quite a lot of recommendations, overview of issues and recommendations. So that was just compiled into a table here on page 17 and 18. And then our recent meetings on page 19 and 20. And then after that, I've added a section on just a brief, very high level overview of summary of public testimony, how we conducted invited public testimony in meetings and then in public listening sessions, and then just listed here recurring issues that were highlighted by public testifiers. And then on page 25, you'll see just a placeholder, essentially. Oh, I guess you can't see that. A placeholder, and that will be the final recommendations once adopted and finalized by the working group at the final meeting will be inserted there. One thing I will note, and Chair Bonner, please correct me if I need a correction, but one thing I'll note here is that the recommendations document that members will work from today that was sent yesterday, that large sheet of recommendations will be attached to the report as an appendix. And then the prioritized recommendations that are finalized and approved at the final meeting next week will be inserted into this section here. With that, that's my walkthrough of the draft final report as it currently is, and I'm happy to take any questions if there are any.
Do we have any member questions before we move on in the agenda? Again, just as a reminder, this is on the webpage, so folks can review it, see it, read it, all of that, kind of walk through that and get a sense of the report and kind of refresh our memories on all the folks who've presented and what their recommendations were, and the information that they were able to provide us. And then, of course, that last section, the placeholder there will be sort of the summary of those things that we might have prioritized or those common themes. And then we will, of course, make an appendix available with all of the recommendations that come out of the group, so that they are available for reference as well. So we won't lose any of them. We will just make sure that they get in that appendix so the public can see them. And with that, if there are no other further questions, and I am not seeing any hands, we are going to move on to the next part, and I will kind of give a brief overview of what our plan is here. So we're going to have 2 rounds of discussion today. The first round, each will be about 45 minutes. What we'll do is we'll break each of the members into breakout groups. You've been assigned to 2 groups, and staff has worked to do their best to assign you to areas where you might have expertise or things like that. But if for some reason something does not align and you wish to join one of the other groups, please send a note in the chat to Mr. George. But we did try to break them up as evenly as possible as well. What we will ask is there'll be a facilitator in each group. Thank you, staff. We have some extra staff here today who are going to help facilitate that. They will take notes on all of the changes or additions, subtractions, notes that we have from our discussion, and they will make sure that that gets collected. And we can then put all of those recommendations back together based on any refinements that we have in the end. You should have received a copy of all of the recommendations in your note, and we did send out another copy in Excel format for some folks who needed a different format as well. We can certainly do that again, and happy to make that accommodation. That said, I just want to make sure that each of you is assigned to a topic on the spreadsheet, such as governance, fines or fees, that sort of thing. There are 8 groups in total, 4 in the first round, 4 in the second. Our mission is to edit, revise, or consolidate these recommendations as you see fit. Note where you think there might be any gaps or missing recommendations within your category, and note any recommendations you feel would need something added or subtracted in order to implement them. Then we will ask that you mark or make recommendations for those things that are high impact to rise those to the top, and might have the greatest practical impact or effect on the communities most interested. And time permitting, you can certainly mark the recommendations on your topic areas that might be of lesser impact, but certainly you're welcome to do that as well if your group has additional time. We'll repeat the entire process for the second group, but that we will take that 10-minute break in between. That'll give staff the time to set up our new work groups, and of course for all of the rest of us to stretch our legs or get a nice bio break. And then, let's see, anything else I missed? I think I got it all. All right. Well, with that, we're going to let staff go ahead and put us into our first set of working groups. And happy discussing. If anyone needs to, by all means, feel free to send a note in the chat or send a note to myself or Mr. George if you have any challenges.
Thanks, Rep Bonner. I just wanted to mention that if folks would like to access these instructions for the small groups, I put the link in the chat to where this PowerPoint lives on our website. I'll put it in one more time for anybody that just joined, and then that way you'll have the instructions handy. So make sure you copy that link. Okay, I'm going to open the rooms.
Thank you, Ms. Pollock.
See you in 40 minutes. All right, Chair Bonner, we finished our first round. Should we go on break?
Thank you for that. Okay, and hopefully everyone had really good, robust discussions. I know we did in my group. And so I really appreciated the insights there. So yes, let's mark it here and take a 10-minute break and come back at about 10:40-ish. And then we will go into our second level of breakouts. So everyone take a moment, stretch your legs, grab some water, use a bio break, whatever you need to do. All right. All right. It is about 10:41. It's a 10-minute break. Does it look like folks are filtering back? All right. If staff wants to go ahead and shift us into our next working groups, please feel free.
All right, thanks. And I think what I'll do is I'll put the link to the PowerPoint in the chat one more time. And also just wanted to mention that for folks who would like to know which subject it is, obviously your facilitators will announce it. But if you look at the name of the group as it's opening, it should also list for you there what the topic is. All right, I'm going to open the rooms. All right, looks like the other groups are still making their way back. All right, Chair Bonner, whenever you're finished with your smoothie, I'm going to turn it back over to you for our large group discussion, and let me know if you'd like me to put the prompt questions in the chat. You're on mute, Chair Bonner.
Sorry about that. I will repeat what I said to the last group just in case. My sweetheart has not returned home, and I am expecting a delivery at around 11:30 of a new grandpuppy. So my son is popping over. We are puppy sitting for a few hours. So I just want to alert folks in case there is a minor kerfuffle or disturbance. Might need to go and accept the package, if you will. And happy to share a photo of our friend Kona, our new baby puppy. He is a Labradoodle puppy. So in any event, just letting folks know that that might happen just in case does. And let's get into the larger group. So thank you for everyone who participated in the smaller groups. I know some of the groups had a lot to sift through. Some it was a little easier lift, some a little harder. So I appreciate that. I do want to make sure that we make clear that if you were not in a particular group, but you had something that you felt very strongly about, you can still submit written information or suggestions on those things, but to the staff and to myself. And we will accept those through Tuesday, preferably by noon, but end of day at the latest. And we will try to recompile all of the pieces from today's discussion into a version 2 of the recommendations and get those out to everyone. So if there's folks who want to make comment or so forth, you're more than welcome to do that. This is not the end of the line per se, but we do want to let you know that in advance, that you will have that opportunity. But I do want to thank everybody for the small group discussions. We had some very robust conversations in my groups, and I suspect the same in others. For our last part of the meeting today, I just wanted to kind of go through if there are any recommendations where you had questions or comments you'd like to pose to the larger group. Are there other recommendations that weren't in your assigned category that you feel really strongly about that you'd like to make a comment on? Are there any other pieces that folks feel really strongly about that they'd like to bring to the top in terms of our recommendations or things that you think are sort of those must-haves? And I'll see if do we have any other members? Sorry, let me push my screen open a little further so I can see any hands if they're raised. Does anybody have any thoughts about the process? Member Kimball.
I just wanted to voice, I feel like in both of the small groups that I was part of today, one of the key themes that came up was trying to restrict or maybe I would use the word simplify what HOAs have jurisdiction over and really trying to connect HOA governance to common area maintenance, operations, and insurance, and limit how much HOAs are creating rules and enforcing them on private property, particularly in the case of single-family detached HOAs. We also talked a lot about trying to ease dissolution rules, and I think that's a really important takeaway from this working group.
Thank you for that. I would agree. Those are pretty common themes. Member Borden.
Yeah, I agree with Roxanne. We were in our first group together, and maybe just to I reiterated back with Abra on an ending conversation that we had. A lot of the governing documents, the declarations, and then therefore the rules and regulations really stem from the development of the association. So maybe that guidelines starts from the development phase when those governing documents are being drafted, which then can put some guidelines around what can be controlled or governed over common elements versus maybe even more specifically in a single family home association. As it's being developed, those governing documents put some more guidelines on what can be governed by the association regard to that homeowner's lot and the exterior of their home might solve or avoid some of the issues that we're running into on, you can't tell me what to do, I own my home.
Yeah.
One
Are you
thing we talked
suggesting,
about.
Member
Go ahead.
Borden, that there be a different standard for single family detached versus those folks like in townhomes or condos?
Absolutely. I mean, they are vastly different types of associations. They're managed differently. The general assessment structure is vastly different. They have less common elements, so their budget is a lot smaller. Normally, in a single family association, the main governance is over architectural control. You can't have a purple door. That type of thing. The board wants to be able to review or approve the type of fence that they put around their backyard, whether they can have a shed, and then the rules start to come into play. You can't have a basketball hoop, but they're in a single family home division. They don't have a clubhouse. There's no monument. So I think that's where we run into this kind of boilerplate of declarations where the rules and regulations are derived from. We can start there as the association's being developed, those governing documents having standards for townhomes, condos, single family homes that developers and their attorneys can use. That's going to maybe eliminate some of the strife that we're having now as the associations transition from developer control.
Mm-hmm.
You're saying we should be advocating more for the purple door and the basketball hoop or against them?
I think those are extremes, but basketball hoops seems to be a big topic for single family homes, and whether a family of 4 kids can have a basketball hoop in their front yard, I don't know. I'm just saying the rules and regulations are coming from that declaration as the developer is in control and building out that community. So if we're wanting to put guidelines around what the rules and regulations are, I think we need to start with how the governing documents are drafted.
Great. Thank you, Member Borden. Member Howard, sorry, I saw your hand go up and then go down. Did you have a comment?
Thank you, Chair Bonner. I was gonna, Member Borden kind of spoke to it as you did the follow-up question, but I was gonna say we absolutely need more ability to regulate behavior in those condos, townhomes where people are living closer together, more shared property, that sort of thing. For part of the reason that we talked about in one of our previous sessions is that the police don't want to do anything about a lot of the behaviors that happen on association property. And if the police aren't going to regulate, even when it's criminal behavior or allegations of criminal behavior, and we're going to strip the ability of the associations to do anything about it, even if it's fines or whatever, then people aren't going to want to live in those associations because people, they're going to be worried about, their neighbors running amok and doing all kinds of crazy things and harmful things and whatever. So, but I agree that there is a difference in how those things operate between that type of community and a detached single family home community.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Thank you for that. Member Green.
Thank you, Chair. I just an observation that Member Borden's example of the single family detached association that has these overbearing rules is an example of an association that doesn't really want to be an association. And so instead of changing the rules on that association, I say, and this came up in our meetings, in our work groups, explore other options for these developers and cities that don't create an association that really doesn't fit and people don't want to be in. Whether that's a maintenance agreement with the city or, you guys are all the experts on that sort of thing, but when you were speaking or when the member was speaking, it's just that perfect example of these accidental associations that really do not want to form, and the buyers don't want to be in an association because there are buyers who really want to be in that association that says no purple door, and they should be able to buy into that. But the people that are buying into that are buying because that's all they have available to them because of the affordability and the inventory issues that we have. So I would just make that observation that there should be exploration of other options than an association.
And that brings up a larger point, and I'll just throw this out there, and then I think I'm going to go. I think maybe Senator Pa had a comment that I do wonder if there is some sort of other arrangement. So let's say the only thing you have is a monument that you really need to maintain. Could homeowners have an account that they keep in reserve if there's maintenance required to that down the road, and maybe they only need to meet once a year? They don't really need an association. They don't really need, whatever. But I think that it does beg the question, are there places where we have associations that really don't need an association? They need some sort of other arrangement. And I don't know what that would look like, but certainly I think that has come up a number of times throughout our conversation. So I appreciate that. Senator Pa, did you have a comment?
I did. I'm sorry, Chair Bonner, that I didn't raise my hand. I wasn't sure how we were going to do this discussion, so I apologize.
No worries.
I wanted to bring up that there in both of the groups I was in, reasonable was one thing that came up regularly. And so as we are working on potential bills and recommendations, that we just look at making sure that we reference that as like actual guide or reference it back to something else, because reasonable can be very subjective. It can be anything. And so I think we all have different views of what reasonable is. And so as we're just making recommendations for legislation that we try and when we use reasonable anywhere, that we reference it back to what does that look like? What could it be? Something that we already have, whether it's federal law or state law, or especially we say, like, let's say reasonable time as an example, that we go say it's up to a certain amount of days. That would be what would be considered reasonable. So some kind of guide. So it's not just reasonable out there somewhere in the space, it could be anything.
That's by that. Agreed. And I think there was also a comment about the concept of, and I forget the other word, there was reasonable and justifiable. So not just reasonable. Or there was another term that came up, and I was looking for it in my notes that was really good. It wasn't justifiable, but it really kind of succinctly determined that. But I do think there are a number of, and the lawyers among us can probably confirm, but I believe that courts often do have something, sort of a reasonableness standard, where they sort of have this expectation that if an average person considers this to be reasonable, and what would that look like, right? And I think it is a little bit squishy, but it is often used in a legal context is my understanding. And I see Member Howard shaking her head. And I know this too because I've been reviewing that concept in talking about online safety for children in the bill that I've been working on with folks across the country. So I know it's out there. So, all right, but that's an excellent point. Thank you for underscoring that, Senator Pa. Member Cole.
Thank you. going back to the idea of roles and responsibilities, I would like to see that defined where, if the police don't want to get involved, but that's the role of the municipality, so it shouldn't be an option where the police don't get involved. If we're in a municipality, we need to follow the ordinances of the municipality, and that needs to be enforced. And because my board chair is not a cop, there is no qualifications for the legal enforcement. I want the right people doing the right job and having those roles and responsibilities defined and enforced in this relationship. And the other issue that comes up quite a bit is around oversight and accountability. I've got somebody showing up in my house in the middle of the night, and there's nobody to say that's wrong, and they get to do it simply because they're a board chair. That's not okay. We need oversight and response and accountability in the roles and responsibilities of everybody involved, and those need to be defined.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that. Member Murray.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On the last two issues that we've been talking about, I'm hearing they come down to people imposing costs on other people for their own benefit, or just because they want to. The financing and the setting up the rules in the first place. Like, I've been thinking about what HOAs are. And I just had my friend who just visited Europe told me HOAs, like, for the common elements, really don't exist in other countries the way they do here. We're sort of unique in that aspect. And like, most shared elements would be managed by a neighborhood council or like a subset of the municipality. So I would encourage us to look at dissolution, like specific dissolution clauses with minimal for at least the HOAs that don't want to be HOAs anymore. And I would also look at some sort of study or work group to look at how are governments essentially borrowing against homeowners' futures to create developments, because that's what I'm hearing is happening here. It's a financing structure to finance new development. And it's coming with extra restrictions and covenants that don't necessarily need to exist if we can find another financing option that doesn't create HOAs. Not sure that, like, it's tied between finance and social, so I'm not sure specifically what we do there.
Very good. All right. Thank you for that. I don't see other hands up at the moment, but are there any specific recommendations or things that came out in your groups that people felt really strongly need to be included in the top line of the report that haven't been mentioned already?
Member Butler, Chair Bonner here.
Member Butler, go ahead.
It wasn't brought up in my group, but for me, at the core, affordability is removing the possibility for HOAs to foreclose on homes going forward. That is high impact, and at the most, I know people like, well, they should be able to recover their fees. Credit card companies, other people have other ways to recover their fees. HOA should have never been given the option to take people's homes, their ability to create wealth, and even taking homes that have been paid for because of these frivolous fees that they've been allowed to be imposed on people because of HOA has been forced upon people. And so I want to continue to reiterate that it did come up in my group as something that they would like to recommend. It was not in our recommendations. And so I just kind of want to highlight and put that at the top of this conversation that HOA should no longer be allowed to foreclose on people's home. Only the bank. That's between the bank, the lender, and the homeowner.
But just a curiosity question. Are you thinking that should that be more at the root where we just don't allow for those frivolous fines and fees so that it can't get to that point rather than saying that there can't be foreclosure for any reason?
Yeah, there shouldn't be foreclosure for any reason because I feel like there's too many opportunities, and that's what happened. Too many opportunities for them to create fines and fees. We've left too many broad areas for them to still create fines and fees. We'll never be able to address every single thing that could possibly cause a fine or fee. And so to be on the safe side, people should never be able to, HOA should never be allowed to foreclose on people's home. As somebody who's lost their home twice for $9,000 in a home that's worth $200,000, personally almost lost my home for $9,000. And so I just know the harm, the trauma that I'm still living with. You know, I was able to recover and save my home, but the harm and the trauma that I'm still living with has yet to ever be addressed and will never be addressed. And so therefore they should never, ever be allowed to foreclose on people's homes.
Just asking out of curiosity, I think we would never suggest a prohibition entirely on foreclosure for regular homes that don't exist in an HOA. So would we be creating a double standard, and what way would we be able to address that? That's just a curiosity question.
As a single family homeowner as well, my HOA cannot foreclose on my home, right? It's different for townhomes and condominiums. They can, right? The only person that can foreclose on my home is the lender, as if you're living in what is defined as a single family home. So it wouldn't be a
All right.
double standard. I think it's a double standard. It's more so of a double standard now that HOAs and condominium homeowners who sometimes are forced to purchasing a townhome and a condominium have to live with heavier constraints because they're forced to due to affordability of a townhome and a condominium versus a single family home. And so those standards have been unfair.
Thank you. Thank you for the clarification. All right, Member Kimball.
I was just going to add, I haven't heard dispute resolution raised up as something that's critical for us to address in the report and in our recommendations. And I think it is critical. Currently, the main pathway that a homeowner has to seek dispute resolution is through the court system, and it's important that there's some gradated opportunities for first having a dispute resolution process directly with the HOA board to just talk out with neighbors what the conflict might be. And then second, I think there should be a dispute resolution process with an ombudsperson or someone who can try and keep legal fees and legal fees down in a dispute process.
Thank you, Member Kimball. And I will tell you, I just spoke to Chair Moeller yesterday. I know she is planning to bring back the ombudsman bill to specifically address some of those concerns. So just a heads up that I do know that is coming. We had a good conversation yesterday. Member Samansky.
Thank you, Chair Bonner. I'd like to rebut a little bit about the foreclosure discussion. Our subgroup did discuss it in great detail. We discussed trying to extend it, making sure fines were not inclusive, the ability, setting a minimum threshold. But on the other side of that coin, if you simply do not allow it at all from an HOA perspective, there are states who have tried this. I believe Nevada was one of them at one point. You end up with two things. One, a significant amount of deferred maintenance, which is your puppy there.
Yes. If I could, Mr. George, in case there's anything, can you take over briefly for a moment while I accept the package? All right, hold on.
I can make a list if people like to raise their hands.
Okay, thanks.
And we,
Thank
yeah,
you.
yeah.
Thanks, Mr. So speaking of the foreclosure piece, if foreclosure isn't allowed, the HOA is handcuffed and trying to collect their money that they need to operate. And what ends up happening is all of the other people in the community end up making up for that difference. You end up with deferred maintenance, but then on top of that, I understand from a credit perspective, a single person or a couple or a married couple who own a community or own property within an HOA, that's easy to move to collections at a reporting bureau. But properties are bought with all sorts of entities, from trust to LLCs. The list goes on. And the ability to collect via a credit reporting bureau on those types of groups is next to impossible. So then the association ends up without their money, and then you end up with deferred maintenance, and then you end up with everybody else in the association footing the bill for that unit that was not paid.
Andrew, if you'd like, I can step in as a facilitator.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Member Zavadski. Recognize Member Howard.
Thank you. Yeah, I would add to what Member Zavadski was saying, that it's not just, you know, it's not feasible and practical to say that associations can't foreclose, because that's really in most cases their really only ability to collect. And you know, we've talked about this before, very few homes that are in collections end up even in the foreclosure process, and a smaller percentage of those end up going all the way through where the owner loses their home. So it's not something that happens a lot, that people lose their homes. It does happen, but not a lot. The other thing that I was going to mention on the ombudsperson, I was in that group, and that is one of the recommendations that's coming out of that group is well, and of course, you know, we'll have to define what that means, but we talked a lot about, you know, creating the ombudsperson position, what their roles would be, you know, and as far as dispute resolution, providing, you know, educational materials and that kind of thing, and then talking about which the greater group would have to talk about, you know, does that office have enforcement authority, or is it just a mediator kind of role, and those sorts of things that need to be hashed out. But that was talked about. And then the other big thing that was a recurring theme in both the groups that I was in is about education. Whether that's required education, whether there's, you know, some sort of incentive provided to associations, boards, management companies to get or give education. But certainly a lot of the issues that we're seeing and hearing from homeowners particularly revolves around not necessarily not having good laws in place already. It's about board members, managers, whoever it is, not understanding what the laws already say and not following them because they don't know. So I think a lot of the issues that we're talking about could be maybe not solved, but certainly improved upon with better education.
Thanks, Member Howard. Oh, it looks like we have a special guest. I'm going to spotlight our chair just so that everybody can say hello, and then I'm going to pass back off to Madam Chair. What's the name of the special guest, Rep Honor?
Everybody, this is Kona. Hi. Who apparently, I'm told, will probably cry if I don't hold him. So, and my son Joseph in the background here is delivering the package, but just thank you all for momentarily enlightening me.
It's on your lap.
Oh, sure. Okay.
Okay.
It's like having a baby, right? We got to make sure he can lay down and all right. Sounds
Okay, now
good.
you've melted all of our hearts and we can resume normal business.
Yes. Okay. All right, back to it.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Jean's gonna pick them up.
Got it.
We
All
just heard
right.
from Member Howard, and I think we're back to opening it up to any comments.
Okay. Any other comments before we head? We've got about 9 minutes left. If there aren't any other comments, we will go to sort of our end here. Just to kind of give you sort of next steps and all that. If somebody thinks of something in the meantime, feel free to raise a hand, but I just want to make sure that folks are aware that we are going to try to recompile all the recommendations with the notes from today, and get those out. I would like to have them out by no later than Tuesday. So if you do have other suggestions on things that were not in one of your working groups as a result of that document, if you could try to get those to us by Tuesday, we'll get those out as soon as possible to you so you can review them. But please feel free to submit those, and then we'll have that sort of more finalized group that, so we have that for discussion and review on Friday, the 24th. We are planning to meet again from 10 to 12 via Zoom. Is there any other questions about next steps or things, Member Murray?
Oh, I had forgotten about this, but Member Howard and Senator Faw had a fantastic suggestion that echoed the um like making Egan's borrowing program accessible only for
Yeah.
bringing properties up to compliance with ADA standards, like when there are barriers, to just provide a funding or accessible financing stream.
Yeah. Yeah, that came up in one of our conversations as well. So I think that would be an excellent model to explore. So thank you for highlighting that, Member Murray, to the full group. I appreciate that. Senator Pa.
Yes, and that was actually Member Howard's suggestion. I just said, yes, I agree. So she has a lot of great suggestions, so does Member Murray. So
Fantastic.
I just wanted to let all of you know that as we just started legislative session this week, there's been many of my senator colleagues who have already been so excited about the work that we're doing in this group. They're like, when are we going to get those suggestions? We want to, they're so curious about what we're doing and they're really excited. I wanted to share that with all of you. And I've shared with all my Senate colleagues just what an incredible group of people we have in this work group. I mean, we really do. All of you have so much knowledge and experience and have contributed so much to this work. And I've said to them, we don't have the final recommendations, but I can just tell you it's really great things that are coming out of this group. And so they're really excited about our recommendations that will be coming out soon as we finalize them. And just the support that we have in the Senate that I've heard, I'm sure we have it in the House too, for the work that we do. And so I just wanted to give you guys that update.
Sounds good. All right. Very good. Any other questions or comments from the group before we go? If not, again, it is our intent to take all the things that we got from today from each of our facilitated groups and compile those back into one, and then send that out once again. For folks to review. If you have comments that you didn't get to make in one of the groups, please feel free to send those to staff, Mr. George or myself, and then we can sort of work to get that incorporated as well. And then we'll make sure that you have a copy of all of it a couple days in advance so that you can review that before the final report before our meeting on Friday. And the mission of Friday's meeting is to sort of take another walk through that report. If there are any final comments, suggestions, recommendations that we should add into that final report. And of course, our objective is, of course, to approve that report with the exception of allowing for staff to make any necessary changes or corrections that we dictate. Senator Pa.
Thank you, Chair Bonner. May I suggest or request that we get maybe the documents sent to us in like an Excel spreadsheet so we can, not that it has to be something that we mess up for the rest of the people, so we're not editing it, but it's just that the PDF, I could barely read it. And so if it was in a different format, I could probably zoom in or I could print it out a certain different way that I could read it. So if I could suggest that for the next meeting, that would be great.
Absolutely. And we did send out another version for a couple folks who asked for it. So I think we can certainly make that recommendation. Thank you for that. I think that that's appreciated. And of course, if you're like me, I like to make notations and mock things up or, you know, whatever if I need to. So I appreciate that suggestion. I do think that can be really valuable. And you're not the only person to make that suggestion. So thank you for that feedback. I appreciate it. Any other last comments, questions before we adjourn for today? All right. Well, with that, our friend Kona here is going to say goodbye. We're going to head out. We will adjourn today's meeting. Thank you, everyone, and we will see you on Friday. All right. Bye-bye.
Thank you.